Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Creative Odyssey podcast. Today I'm here with Dr. David Berceli, who I met very accidentally. He is an author, an adventurer, an international known expert in the work of trauma intervention, and he has been more than kind to be with me on this episode. We will have a conversation about his experiences and his stories. And I hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
What do you think drew you, especially in the work of trauma?
Well, I was always interested in the field of psychology, but I happened to live in several countries in the Middle East where there was war.
Yes.
And so trauma was very common there. And I experienced traumatic experiences myself, as well as lived with the population that was being traumatized. So that drew me to figure out, how do we survive this? What's going on? And how do human beings make sense of something as senseless as war?
And did you also study in this field, psychology?
Yes, I have a degree in psychology. That's my
Yeah.
background. But I also have several degrees in body work and neurophysiology.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah.
That's interesting. Where did you study these courses? And
Also in different places around the world. I studied
interesting.
in Egypt, Lebanon, Italy, and the US.
Oh, very many different ethnicities and
Yeah.
different places. Okay, so do you think trauma is something that everyone deals with? Everyone sometimes deal with trauma or no?
Well, first of all, we're going to identify trauma as what's called in the literature trauma with a big T and trauma with a little t.
Mhm.
So trauma with a little t would be natural growing up sort of traumas, which could be a physical trauma. You fall down, you break your leg, or you fail at a class in school and it's very traumatizing for you, or a big trauma, something like war and you lose a loved one or something like that. So yes, I believe, and it's pretty much accepted, that every human being on the planet will experience trauma in life, whether it's a small trauma or a big trauma, but we will experience it. And, and what I think is important to know about it is that as a living organism, meaning the human species, we are actually genetically designed to know we will experience it, to be able to endure it, survive it. And there's a lot of research suggesting we evolve as a result of it.
Yes.
So I try to normalize trauma rather than make it something exceptional that people question.
Yeah. So what is the difference between the big T and the small one?
Okay, the big T would be like living in war, where your house is destroyed or you lose a loved one, they're killed in the violence. Very shocking type of behaviors, even natural disasters where you have landslides and you lose your whole house and a lot of people are flooded out. Those would be big traumas with a capital T.
Hmm.
Little traumas would be natural traumas that we experience during life. And that could be anything from uh, physical traumas where you hurt yourself in a sports injury, or trauma where you get a divorce, as an example. And then the children are traumatized from that. It's sort of like daily life types of things that happen to us. Those would be considered little traumas.
But the big ones mostly they have long-term effects, right?
The big
Compared
ones
to the
have,
small ones.
yeah, the big ones have a much greater effect because when we get traumatized, our whole sense of ourself has to figure out, how do I make sense of life now in light of this circumstance that happened to me? So if you lose a spouse or a loved one in war, as an example, your whole world is shattered. One day they're here and the next day they're gone, and you have to figure out, how am I going to survive or live life now? So that's a very serious trauma because it really causes us to have to rearrange life almost completely. Whereas a smaller trauma, you fail an exam, you fall and you break your leg. Those are things you can recover from more easily.
How do you think they could be
Okay.
fixed
From what I've seen around the world, because I've lived in 7 countries and I've worked with trauma with multiple cultures, languages, different diverse populations, there seems to be 3 ways that people resolve trauma. Either through their body, meaning they do body work, maybe like massage or yoga or things like that, or they do counseling, they go to therapy and they talk about the situation and try to understand what went on and to, um, uh, re re-envision their experience as something that might be growthful. And the other one is their spirituality or their belief system. People who believe in God or Allah or Buddha, Hinduism.
Or anything bigger than themselves
Yes,
that they can relate to.
exactly right. So they kind of go there to try to use that belief system to help them reconcile and make sense of the trauma. So it's usually one of those 3 dimensions that people will go to.
Yeah. So let's talk about suffering. Do you think suffering is necessary for growth, for fixing their traumas?
It's kind of interesting. There's a lot being said about suffering. First of all, I don't like it at all, and I wish it didn't happen. I don't want to say that it's necessary.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure it's exactly necessary, except that when you talk about living life, you're talking about balancing life back and forth. So that sometimes traumas, um, that occur to us or the suffering that you're talking about is a growthful or can be a growthful process. So let's just say something as simple as marriage. You're married and for 3 or 4 years, the marriage is going fine. And then all of a sudden you start to have differences and you don't know how to reconcile them. And you think this is terrible and you're suffering in life. But then something happens that you end up discovering you love each other at a deeper level and the suffering somehow transforms to, oh, we went because we went through this suffering, we went to a deeper level in our relationship, and now we love each other more. See, so I can't say that we can write off suffering as always bad, but to say, do we need it or not, I'm not sure. There's some belief systems that say yes, because it's the balance to good. So good and bad balance each other out all the time. So that's a little bit of a difficult one because I don't want it. I go through it, I experience it like everybody else, and I do grow from it. But I don't know if we had rich people who never had to suffer in life, they still go through suffering. Isn't that
Yes.
interesting?
Yes, it's really interesting.
So,
I've never thought of it of this perspective
y-
because I always thought that suffering is something that at some point you will need to go through in order
mm,
to get what you want, go where you want. And it's like to be a necessary process that you need to go through. But maybe in some perspectives from someone who is in a rich family, in a good position, and he doesn't need suffering because he already have those things.
yeah. But what I think the suffering that I see in those examples, why do you have multimillionaires committing suicide or they're very unhappy?
Yeah,
Why would that happen if they had everything? So the suffering is almost a self-imposed. I have everything I want, and yet I feel empty inside.
yeah,
Now that's interesting. Why would I feel empty inside when I have everything I want? There's something about the human growth process when you talk about suffering that we go through, maybe even put ourselves through it
yeah.
as a way of growing. That seems to be, this is a much deeper level you're talking about, the evolution of the human species.
Exactly. It's really interesting the way that humans with suffering came to where we are because if we didn't suffer from the first place,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be here.
There's your logic of, okay, we've evolved as a human species through suffering. We learned how to survive droughts. We learned how to survive wars and violence. We learned how to survive a lot to stay on the planet as a species. And much of it was through suffering.
Yeah. But it's also important of which path, which suffering you choose, because it could be very different, right?
Yeah.
When you have different choices, and if you make the right decision, you might suffer less.
That's exactly right. Now there you go back into something like trauma. If I can make the wrong decision all the time because I've been traumatized. Let's say I was abused as a child and I grew up and I always get in abusive relationships and repeating the pattern. That's because that pattern is safer because I know it than something new. So I actually cause my own suffering because I'm choosing a safe pattern, which includes suffering, rather than daring myself to choose a completely different pattern that may not have suffering in it.
But do you think people have a choice? Because sometimes their body chooses for them. Like the example that you use, right? Do you think they can use their consciousness to change that?
Well, see, now you're talking about neurophysiology. Yeah, and in the body working together. Who's signaling who? The body sends signals to the brain, and the brain sends signals to the body. It is through the nervous
It's a
system.
circle.
So, yeah, so it goes back and forth. So I could say I have a heart feeling or an intuition. I'm going to move in this direction. When my brain is saying, don't go, don't go, don't go. Who's going to win? Sometimes my brain says, go, go, go. And my heart says, no, no, don't go there. That's the wrong decision. So that conflict is always inside of human beings.
Oh, yeah. So do you think mental is important or physical? Which is more important?
Well, let me say this. I think they're supposed to be balanced, but 80% of neural signaling goes from the body to the brain, and 20% of neural signaling goes from the brain to the body. So essentially, as we understand neurology, our ego or our conscious thinking, it can only make sense of data that it has been given. That's it. They need to be balanced in the sense each needs to have their appropriate place in our decision making processes in life. But the body does send more signals to the brain than vice versa. So we need to give a lot of respect to that.
So let me try to give an example and you explain uh how does that work with that. So let's say a bodybuilder who is taking care of himself from a physical way. He's fit, he's perfectly doing great with his body, but mentally he's struggling.
Mhm.
What do you say to that?
Mhm.
So do you think the mental is it the mental that is affecting him or no, it's something else that is
Yeah.
happening?
No, it's again, it's a little bit of both. If he's suffering in his head, he may be building his body stronger as a way of enduring whatever he's going through. See, so he's actually using his head to drive his body to build bigger, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's more in touch with his body. See, I work with athletes all the time in the field that I'm in. They're very physically fit and they're very unhappy many times. So so it doesn't have to do with the brain and the body building each other together. Sometimes one will drive the other.
Yeah. So in this example, you think that it's the mental that is driving the physical, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But the physical tends to have more effects on human body instead of the mental.
Well, here's the thing. The physical, if you keep your heart rate, your blood pressure, the nervous system, you keep that all healthy, that helps to inform the brain about decisions it's going to make in the future. See? Um, but you can also use the brain to drive those systems to be healthy.
Mhm.
Okay. But there's still a blockage. They're sending signaling to the brain, but we can block that signaling and choose not to follow it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. That's really interesting because I haven't been I didn't really I wasn't sure about this topic that which is more important because sometimes it's the mental, sometimes it's the physical.
Very good.
And it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You see, if that theory was true, we would go to a gym and every fit person there would be completely happy.
but that's not
But
true.
that's not true.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly. So what do you think allowed you to see trauma in a different way?
Well, it was from surviving it. I've been through three wars now and through several natural disasters in all the countries I lived in. And so I was around a whole population of people. We were all traumatized together. And then when I left the country, I had to figure out, what do I do with this experience? It's completely disturbed me, both physically and mentally. And I had to figure my way through it and devise my own recovery method. That's why I was driven to, all right, is it the body? Do I use that to recover? Is it psychology? Do I use that? Is it my spirituality? Do I use my belief in God or uh, some sort of belief system? Which one of those do I use to help me recover? And that's when I discovered, and it took several years, but I realized I went through all three of those. And all three of those collectively help put me back together again to make sense of, how do you make sense of people killing each other in war? That doesn't make sense. If there was a God in my belief system, why would that be happening? See? And then why would I still be living in terror when I left the situation? And I'd be walking the streets in New York, as an example. I'd hear a loud sound and I would get terrified, even though I knew it wasn't a bomb. I knew I was safe, but yet my body was still reacting to that.
Yeah. And do you think that perspective helped you in some way, or did it make it worse?
Well, let me say this. I think it helped me immensely because I had to find my way through healing myself. That journey is what gave me the insight and the information that I needed from a practical perspective to help other people go through the same process. So when people have had the experience, they're the best people to actually help somebody else through it, because we know all the stepping stones. We know all the places they're going to fall or question things. And so as a human being struggling to go through that recovery process myself, I learned how to walk with other human beings through that process.
And one thing, so you've written some books, right?
Yes.
And I'm really fascinated by books and writing. And what drew you into writing? What was interesting about it that you?
Well, I've never really liked writing, but people who I was telling my story to said, you need to write a book, So I thought, oh God. But what I did was my first book was nothing but almost like a journal where I just wrote step by step by step. How did I go from a place where I was severely traumatized to a place where I had healed myself? And so I wrote it in very simple terms because I wanted it to be accessible to a large population of people, not just to people who have an academic degree. I wanted it for mothers and fathers and teenagers to see that there's a way through this. Um, and it's easier than we think, actually. And I wanted to show them, I wanted to guide them through that. Here's what you do to try to get through your trauma. And so it was a very simple book. So I wrote that book. And then about 5 years later or something like that, a publishing company got the book, said they loved it, said, would you please do something with us? So I wrote the second book through a publishing company. And then about 5 years after that, I wrote my third book. And then just last month, I finished my fourth book.
Can people find it online? Is it
Oh,
available?
yeah. You can find them all on Amazon, and just look at my name, Dave.
How can they find it?
Just go to Amazon.com, go under books, write David Berceli, my name, and all the books are listed there.
Okay. You've also been quite an adventurer too, right? You've
Yeah.
traveled to this different places. How do you think the curiosity drives you here? How do you think curiosity
Yeah.
matters in life?
I think what happened to me was I ended up going to Japan. It was the first country I'd ever been to outside of the United States. And I couldn't believe it. Having grown up speaking only English and only knowing the American culture, I went to this country and I thought, listen to this language. This is fascinating. And eating their food and watching people walk down the streets and looking at the culture. I was amazed. And I thought, you mean the world is full of this? I got so excited by that. And so I thought, I got to go travel to different places, only because I like human beings. I think we're an interesting species, and I like to see how do we behave differently or behave the same way? How, why do we like different foods and what's our different languages? So I just got mesmerized by cultures and languages and food, and then, of course, religions and all the different cultures I went to. It all fascinated me because I thought, how did human beings who are similar come up with such differences? And so I've just explored it my whole life and loved it.
And the main force, it's the curiosity that got you here,
Isn't
right?
that odd? That's the
Yeah.
only thing it is. I'm insanely curious about anything new that I have not seen before. If I haven't seen it before, I want to see it. If I haven't eaten it, I want to eat it. I just came from China. I was there for 3 months. The things I ate there, I only ate them because I had to taste them. And I would never eat them again, but I have to try it.
And yeah, that's actually, I think, the way that we met each other, right?
Yes, exactly. Well, yes, we were down at the beach. I had to go to the beach. I saw you there. I had to talk to you, say, "What are you doing here? Who are you? Why are you here?"
Yeah. And
And
that was the reason that we are here today.
exactly right. Just pure curiosity.
Yes, it's very amazing to see how does a small curiosity or a simple question can take you to place that you would never imagine.
Yeah.
It's very fantastic. And do you think curiosity is something that people have, or is it something that they can reach to? Is it like a skill, or is it something that they have with themselves?
You know, it's interesting. I find some people are not curious at all. Like even some of my family members, they don't like to travel at all. And I love to travel. No, they like me to write back to them and say where I'm at and all that stuff. But they're quite happy living at home, eating the food they always eat. There are some people that really like their common lifestyle. It's predictable and normal and easy. That's very attractive to them. And I have nothing wrong with that. I think that has great value to it for them. And then there are other people that I meet, and it's usually when I'm traveling, they're interested in all sorts of diversity and they're curious as much as I am. So I think we have to allow for the whole spectrum of people who don't want to, who aren't curious at all, and those who are extremely curious, and everybody in between.
And when you tend to ask question or be curious, sometimes you go out of your comfort zone to do that, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you don't go out of your comfort zone, you wouldn't grow, you wouldn't learn.
Well, for me, that's true. I mean, I love going out of my comfort zone. It's like, "Oh god, here we go. This is bizarre. I gotta see what happens." I have to do that. I don't know why I'm compelled to do it, but then I have a sister who'd say, "I'll never do that. Never." So it's, we have to allow for diversity.
Yeah. I think we need both to balance sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think when they're together, it would make sense. But when it's maybe sometimes always not curious, I don't think that's a word that I want to live in. But I want it to be balanced.
Right, right. Well, I think in some ways it does balance. I'm very curious. I travel the world. I live in many countries, but there are times where I say, okay, I've got to stop. I got to go home to my house in the US and just be quiet for like 6 months. No extra input from outside, no new cultures, nothing. Just quietly sort of integrate myself. So I think there's a natural balance that occurs even in my fun explorations. At some point, it's like, okay, now I just want to be quiet and be alone and not have a lot of external input.
I understand. I think yeah, the balance needs to be.
Yeah.
And to the places that you travel to many, chaotic places. Do you think beauty is still existed, or people can find beauty there?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There is beauty everywhere on this planet, even when I'm living in difficult situations, let's say if it's at war or something like that, you can still find, if you look, there's like a little piece of beauty in here. It's a piece of art, or it's a little smile of a child, or an old lady who's sitting there being content and happy that she's just there. Somehow there's beauty still, even in where humanity is suffering at times. And I know that sounds terrible because I know that's very hard for people, but somehow we can see beauty on this planet anywhere. Sometimes it's harder to see than others.
Well, why do you think that is?
Because I think we seek it, we look for it as a human species. No matter how difficult life may be, we're still looking for some sort of hope or beauty or kindness or possibility that life is still good. I think we're drawn to look for that.
And but why sometimes we can't find it? Why we can't, find the beauty?
Yeah, at times it seems really difficult because we seem to be overwhelmed with all of which is not beautiful. Um, and so,
And the distractions, I think,
yeah.
now with the social media and
Oh, yeah.
uh, the AI and everything that is going, and we're very overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
sometimes we can't find a way because we are having all this everything, and we can't figure out which is the right way, which is the
Isn't that interesting? You have more data and more information than you've ever had, and then you still say, we can't figure out the right way.
yeah.
You have billions of bytes more of data that you would think would help you to figure out the right way, but it doesn't. See, that's why even sometimes just go away for a week, live on an island by yourself, and just relax and breathe and feel the air and watch the trees. That gives you more data.
And that's inspires you.
Exactly right. Than being on your phone does. Exactly right. So there again is the request for balance. I believe the human organism in which we are living is constantly trying to seek balance. Yes, it wants to be informed by AI and it wants to be on the phone, but it also wants to be, leave me alone, let me be quiet, turn off the phone. I need to relax. I think it's asking us for both.
Yes, I think balance is important in everything. You need to
I
learn how to balance.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that you need to work on by time. And it's not something I think that you can get so easily. It takes time to develop that. And because we're constantly moving and we're constantly learning everything new. And so it's very difficult to balance everything because you're getting more and more and more.
Mhm.
And if you want to balance them, it would be difficult because each time it's different than the last time.
Yeah.
So, how do you think we can learn how to balance our life in today's world?
Well, just like that was profound what you just said. I think that's very powerful for all your young listeners. Yes, balance is what every human organism looks for. It's looking to be balanced in terms of its own health, both psychologically and physically. It's looking for balance in terms of it wants input and data, and then it wants solitude and silence to be able to process the input and the data. So, by our very nature, it's we're seeking balance, and I think it's getting harder and harder for a younger generation because the internet is being almost pushed onto them. So on the phones and on the computers and that sort of thing, the data is coming faster and faster, and you can't always control the amount of data that you're getting unless you turn it off. But part of it is addictive. And so we're looking at an addiction to being on the internet, and we have to fight that addiction. And that's even harder many times than when you're talking about alcohol or drugs. We have to fight the addiction to overwhelm the organism. And so if I'm sad or upset, I may choose my phone as a way of escaping. Different than years ago, I would have chosen alcohol as a way of escaping. No difference. It's an escape form. So we have to be careful of that we're not using the electronics and this new world as a way of escaping and then missing that need for balance.
Yes. And what do you think? How can addiction? Is it something that s- people can go through it and replace it with something else?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, see, the whole question about addiction is the substance or the behavior is not the problem. It's what's underneath that's driving you to that behavior or driving you to that substance. So that's the point about a phone. What's underneath that's causing you to look at that phone for 6 hours? See, looking at the phone for 6 hours isn't the problem. It's the way to escape the problem.
Yeah.
So I'm asking what's underneath that? You're not happy with your family life? You're not happy with yourself? Did you just break up with a boyfriend or girlfriend? Did you just have a fight with your classmates? You're angry at your parents? What are you using this escape for? And that's what'll stop it if we go underneath and say, I'm on the phone because I don't want to talk to my parents all day today. All right. Well, talking to the parents is the problem, not the phone. The
Mm.
phone is just the behavior you're using. See?
And I think some people don't see their phone as an addiction, and that's really interesting because even if you tell some people, they won't understand that this is actual problem
Yeah.
that we're facing today, and
Yeah.
and it's in everywhere.
Yeah.
Everyone, every big cities, if you walk, you see people with their phone walking around,
Yeah.
and they don't realize
Yeah. It
it's
just
serious
amazes me.
problem.
Yes. How bad it's getting so quickly. Literally, you can watch people, well, obviously driving, which is wrong to do, driving while they're on their phones. And what fascinates me is that they're actually walking the streets, not looking at the street at all. So somehow they're using peripheral vision to walk through the street, but they're actually looking at their phone. But it amazes me because I don't know how to do that. I'm too old. But you're right. It's getting worse and worse, faster and faster. Now, if you look at some of the literature, they're suggesting that built right into the phone systems themselves are addictive light wave patterns that draw you to them. See? So we're actually being addicted to the phone.
Yes, and it's because I think we humans, we always want to do something, but we don't understand that boredom and being
Exactly.
bored sometimes, that sometimes that helps you, like going for a walk, going to nature, hiking, exercising, because you don't sometimes you don't get this dopamine in your head always,
Yeah.
and that quiet time inspires you sometimes.
That's very
Best
right.
idea sometimes comes when nothing is around and
Exactly right. When you have no other stimuli, something deep from inside can actually surface. See, and so that's when you can get some of your best revelations. Some of your deepest happiness can come when you're by yourself and you just let go. And like you say, this wonderful dopamine comes in and you say, well, life is beautiful. And that's deeper experience than what you had on two weeks on your phone. See? So you're absolutely right. Being bored is a wonderful experience because it leads you to go to greater depth inside yourself. So that's a very wise statement.
yes, and I think people should make more time for their boredom,
Yes.
whether that could be going for a walk or going to the beach, going for a hike, anything that gets you away for a while from your phone, from your computer
Right.
screen, and
Right.
maybe from some people.
Right.
And I think that's a very good way to find your own way, whether it's travel, you inspire, you get a lot of when you get bored, you always go into your mind and you always think, and sometimes the best ideas, I think that's when they they get you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because those good ideas are in there. And they may have come from a lot of the data you got on the phone, but you still need to process, be quiet, and let it surface in its sort of integrated fashion. But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That boredom serves a great purpose for us going greater depth inside ourselves.
Yes. And what scares you about the new generation, the future that is coming ahead?
Well, I don't. It doesn't scare me, but I'm concerned about it. And I'm concerned about young people that they're
Yeah.
being trained to be addicted to their phones and therefore more easily manipulated. That that concerns me for their lives. I don't care. Planet Earth is going to survive. I believe the human species is going to survive despite all our wars and our violence. I still think we're going to do okay. But my question is, in 20 years, these teenage kids now who are 17, so they're going to be 37, are they going to be happy if they grew up completely addicted to their phone or to the internet and lost that pleasurable sensation of, like you said, just running through the grass or sitting under a tree, having natural, normal human experiences on the planet? See, because when you're on your phone, you could be on the moon because you're not aware where you're at. See, so you're off to somewhere else. Whereas if you put the phone down and you've got beautiful sunset to look at, rather than looking at the pretty sunset on your phone or the picture you just took. I really think my concern is that young people are going to distance themselves from themselves more and more, and that's guaranteed not to create happiness.
I think it gets more difficult when they grow up and when they become adults. So
Right.
the problem is more likely coming when they're children.
Yeah. Well, that's because they're being fed all of this data and information. Even children, young children, 2 or 3 years old, and they put a little program on TV in front of them as an example, as a way of entertaining them. Well, already they're being trained to be entertained by something not in their direct environment. So they're not outside rolling around in the grass or, playing, climbing a tree or whatever. So they're being told that your entertainment's going to come from this box, which then becomes an iPad and then becomes a telephone. And so they never get the sense that their entertainment or fulfillment actually comes from play, if you will, on the planet, different than observing play on a TV screen.
So what would you say to young people right now that they are facing these difficulties, and how could they replace that with something else?
There seems to be two things that work really best is if they do something with a friend or friends where they make a commitment, because everybody's got these friends. They make a commitment and say, okay, we're going to start easy for 1 hour every day. And we're going to come together and we're going to turn our phones off collectively. We're going to turn our phones off and we're going to play, or we're just going to sit here and do nothing until we can figure out how to talk to each other and be together without our phones. So they almost use that as a playful experience. So they do 1 hour a day as an example, or half an hour, but then they slowly increase that because now they're not just taking their phone away, but they're replacing it with relationship, which actually feels better, safer, more pleasurable. So you have to replace the void that the not using your phone will create. You have to replace it with something more pleasurable, and then you give up the phone.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to uh, replace addiction, replace distraction with play and just enjoyment. And when I play with my friend or we just go hang out for just an hour, that gives me more pleasure and more happiness than scrolling through my
Yes.
playing video games.
Yes, exactly. But see, they've got to have that experience because once you had that experience, it's like, oh, I want to do that again. I
Yeah.
would so you call up your friend and you do another thing. See, and then you recognize, wow, being with my friend or my friends is far more exciting and fun, and I'm happier than if I'm scrolling on my phone. So it, that's the whole point. Replace it with something more pleasurable, and you'll give up the phone.
Yeah, and it gives you long-term happiness, not just
Yes,
short happiness.
exactly right.
Because you have all these friends and you have them for a long time, and if they're good friends, they most likely tends to hang out with you when you grow up, and they'll be with you. But uh even if something happy, or for example, let's say you watch a movie, it gives you pleasure, it makes you happy, but it's just for a while and it doesn't last
Yeah.
long.
Yeah. Wait, that happiness will end when I turn off my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it is. The happiness is in this device. When I turn it off, all of a sudden the happiness is gone. Whereas with a friend, you had all that happiness together, and when you're walking away, you can still carry that happiness with you.
Are you thinking bright about future? You think that future's gonna be fine, or we need to educate more, we need to learn more?
Well, I think always we need to educate and learn and grow. So that's part of the nature of being human. I think it's going to be fine in this sense. I don't think that it's going to destroy the human species or destroy our race. It's just a new type of experience that humans have to deal with. Oh, we've dealt with so many different experiences in the evolution of humanity. We'll make it through this one as well. I'm convinced of that. If you really
Hello,
want to find
everyone, and
happiness,
welcome to the
just get
second
out of the
episode of the
house and
Creative
go
Odyssey
into nature
podcast.
and
Today I'm here with
just
Dr. David
let yourself be
Berceli,
bored for
who
a
I met
while.
very
And underneath that
accidentally.
boredom
He
is
is an
this new thing that
author,
you see
an
and say, wow, I never
adventurer,
thought of
an
that before.
international
Now all of
known
a sudden
expert
they're
in the
coming
work
up
of
with sort of
trauma
wisdom
intervention,
inside
and he
themselves,
has been
which
more
actually
than
makes them
kind to
happy.
be with me on this episode.
See, the happiness
We
is
will
in
have a
every one of
conversation
us. It's
about
always
his
there.
experiences and
Whether
his
we
stories.
clear ourselves enough to let it come through is the issue. And usually nature is what does it best.
Yeah. So let's back to the topic of trauma.
Okay.
What is trauma?
Okay. Trauma is an experience that causes us to adjust our normal coping mechanisms that we usually go through life. They're not going to work. So trauma is we have to adjust that mechanism because the safety that we normally had is not there. And so we adjust ourselves to accommodate the situation that we're in. If you didn't have to do that, you're not being traumatized. Now, here's the thing. The trauma occurs oftentimes when the safety is not there. So a little child could fall off a crib as an example, but if mommy or daddy is close by and they pick them up right away, that's a traumatizing experience, but they immediately, safety has been restored and the child will calm down. If they fall off the bed and mom and dad aren't in the room and they don't hear it, the child lays there crying. It may be hurt, just innocently hurt, banged its head. But that would be a more serious trauma because safety was never restored. See, so trauma is both the incident itself and the amount of safety that was or was not there.
But it's more dangerous when it's happens when you're children. Yes.
Well, in that sense, yes, if the safety of mom and dad or an older brother or sister isn't there, that's more traumatizing. But see, like I said, those are usually little traumas or traumas with a small t, not a big trauma like war. Or,
Mm.
abusing a child is different than a child falling off the bed accidentally.
Yeah. And you mentioned some examples to fix or treat those traumas.
Mhm.
And could you explain more onto that? The examples, the exercises that uh, you do to treat your patients and hopefully to make them feel better?
Yeah. Well, there are many different modalities as an example. So you have EMDR, which is an eye movement desensitization process that uses the eyes. You have many like massage therapy, chiropractic work, all these other medical services that deal directly with the body. They all help resolving some element of trauma in the physical organism. Even if it's an emotional trauma, it's still located somewhere in the body. So all of these things can help. Now, having said that, also some people need and want to talk about it because they need to put words to the experience and they need somebody to hear them. Other people don't like to talk about it. When I work with soldiers, they don't want to tell you what happened. So each person's recovery process from trauma is going to be slightly different. Like I told you, some people will say, I don't know why God allowed this to happen. I don't know why Allah would let this happen. And so now they're beginning to question their belief system or their faith. And so we need to allow people to go through each of these stages in their own way because they need to put their life back together in a way that it makes sense to them once again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's many different modalities to do that. So I don't like to limit it to just one. Now, I developed a modality myself because I've found some behaviors in the human body that help it survive. One of them is that when we're nervous, that we shake. Okay, when we're scared and we shake, our hands or our legs or whatever will shake. Well, I learned how to stimulate that shaking through an exercise routine, which is what my books are about, because that shaking is what we call down regulating the nervous system. It's discharging the high excited charge of the nervous system, and it's shaking itself back into a relaxed state. So I wrote a book on how do we introduce this shaking to people in a way that they can do this safely and comfortably by themselves at home, so they can start down regulating their nervous system after a traumatic event.
Hmm. And that's really interesting. I think it's a very difficult thing because you need to understand in every individual with their own characteristics and their own belief in order to treat them, in order to make them feel better. Because you cannot uh treat someone the way that you treat another one.
Right.
Everyone
That's
is unique with himself.
Yes, but there's something beautiful about that too.
Yeah.
If I had a room here of 30 people, we're all recovering from different traumas around the world, my first question would be asked is, all right, how many of you think talking about is going to be comfortable? How many of you want to do body work? And how many of you want to reflect about your relationship with uh, a higher power, as an example, and see what the differences are there, and then group them according to their differences? It would be very interesting, and it's helpful for them to see exactly what you said, is everybody's different, and everybody has a different starting point in their recovery process.
That's really interesting. That's very interesting because you go to understand them, and I see that character in you because you really along with every character you get to uh understand them, and I think that that is what it takes to be able to get close with those people, and hopefully they will recover from their traumas and uh their bad experiences. Yes. So if you could sit, sit across your younger self in a war, let's say, for example, what would you say to him? What would you, what advice would you give to him?
I would say, and this is all the experience that I've had in life, this is temporary, and you're going to get through it. So don't take it so seriously, and allow yourself to learn something through the process. Meaning every life experience has something to grow from or learn from. When I'm in it and it's terrifying, as an example, it's hard to accept that I'm going to grow from this. That's the last thing I want to hear. But having been through that many times, it's been true every single time. So if I were to tell my younger self that, I'd say, don't worry, you're going to get through this, and something growth was going to come from this later on. So just hang in there.
Yeah. And what is your plan for future? How do you see your future?
Well, I'm supposed to be retired right now, although I'm still involved in teaching around the world. So the technique I designed, it's in about 70 countries now. And so I go to those countries and I support them because there are a lot of natural disasters now on the planet. So I go to countries where they have natural disasters, and we take populations of 300 people at a time, and we show them how to recover, how to do it as mothers and fathers or families or as a community. How are you going to recover? Because my goal still is, how do we help people recognize they can heal from this trauma? They can heal from it. They're going to get through it. It's okay. So I try to bring sort of a hopeful aspect of that with some practical methods to be able to get through it.
So hope, you mentioned hope. Um, uh, do you think hope is what drives people to continue? It's something that uh, completely changed their decisions.
Yeah.
How important is hope for you?
Yeah. I think hope is very important. And particularly because in trauma, we often lose hope. We think there is no hope for getting out of this. But and I think that's a natural part of humanity as well. But I think we have to, as much as we can, sustain the fact that, yes, it may feel hopeless right now, but at some point that will change and I will see there's a hopeful way out of here.
But hope is scary sometimes, right? I think
Oh, very often, yeah.
hope, thinking that something because some people think from the experiences they have because they might have a lot of bad experiences and they don't believe that something good it's possible
Oh, yeah.
because they haven't seen that and it's tend to seem very scary sometimes and I've seen it in friends and family members and that they just want to believe but they can't
That's
allow themselves to.
that's a tough one. I agree. When a person loses hope, because I lost hope really twice in my life. I really lost hope in believing that there was any value to even being alive. And there was no one that could help me out of that. I had to get out of that myself. It was my decision in my brain. You could have loved me, or anybody could have been kind to me and gracious, as all my family and friends were. But when I experienced hopelessness, I would sit in a room with people who loved me, and I couldn't feel that at all. Yes, I knew they loved me, but I felt so isolated and so alone. So hope is really difficult sometimes um, to sustain. And when we lose it, we still have to hope that hope is going to come back. See, we still have to hope on that. So it, it's multi-layered, but hope is very important. But you're right, many people will lose it. And unfortunately, those are people who might give up on life.
Have you seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
Yes.
And he talks about the hope. That's I would say that's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
And he says he talks about hope, that hope is a great thing. It's maybe one of the best things, and no good thing ever dies. That was one of the lines that ever changed my life,
Wonderful.
and it inspired me to do what I want and to be bright, to think bright about the future and what's gonna come because I'm the one who is choosing it that what's going to come and I would think brightly, hopefully, and I think that will allow me to get there and
Yeah.
get what I want, hopefully.
I agree with you. Keep that hope alive. And as a young person that you are, it's a wonderful message for you to give to other young people who might be struggling right now, and already starting to lose hope because of whatever circumstances they're living in. But you have a powerful message for them to say, no, no, don't give up. Don't give up. There's something still important here. Stay hopeful about it.
Yeah, that was very, very amazing. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
It was a amazing conversation, and hopefully I will meet you soon one day. And I'm sure there's still a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. You're a very bright young man, and you have some
you.
very good points that you brought up. Bring that to your generation, okay? That you guys need it.
I will.
All
I
right.
will. Thank you very much.